Welcome to the Liquid Network podcast. I'm Antonio Vaccari, and for 5 years, I've been in the trenches of winter maintenance, helping contractors and municipalities move from salt to smarter, more effective liquid programs. This show is where I sit down with real people actually doing it, the operators, the clients, the suppliers, to talk about what's really working, what isn't, and where this industry is headed. No fluff, just real conversations. So today I'm talking with Dan from ConSalt. He's a longtime collaborator and a person who's seen EcoSolutions' evolution from outside and in. Hopefully by the end of this episode, you'll know what the Liquid Network is all about and why we built it. Let's get into it. So Dan, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Antonio. I'm excited to launch this thing.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. It's August, it's sunny, it's warm, and yeah, we're talking snow. So isn't that great?
And we've been doing it for months.
Yeah. Dan, before snow and ice, you were at Environment Canada. What kind of work did you do there? Because that's a little bit, that's a far fetch.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. My background, I went to the University of Waterloo for environmental science and computer science. So I ended up at Environment Canada doing aquatic toxicology research. So the effects of different contaminants on freshwater ecosystems. So we'd study the effects of oil sands runoff or PFOA, which comes on like non-stick pans. So I was there for 3 years in a number of different labs. And one of the labs I was working for, one of the researchers had a passion project looking at the effects of road salt and chloride pollution on freshwater ecosystems. And so that's kind of how I first heard about the scale of the issue. And then I had a friend who was in the snow and ice industry. And so after kind of learning about the issue for a little while and being between Environment Canada contracts, I went and jumped at a chance to go and work at that company. And as they say, the rest is history. I've been kind of working in the industry for 7 or 8 years since then in a variety of different areas.
Yeah, that's crazy. And you know, people are going to hear a lot from you on this show. So let's think about where that took you from Environment Canada into actually doing the work in snow and ice. So, you know, what do you think about that? That, you know, it's two totally different markets. It's how do you feel about it?
Yeah. So when I was working at Environment Canada, I mean, it was very much a science forward position, beakers, tests, statistical analysis. Everything was kind of very by the book and jumping through hoops. And I enjoyed it, but I felt that in some ways the impact wasn't there. We would identify that a particular contaminant was super damaging to the environment, but then we couldn't actually do anything about it. And so when the road salt problem came across my mind and I had this connection with a friend in the industry, I thought, hey, maybe I can go and see what is actually happening on the ground level. And so I jumped over into the snow and ice industry, and it couldn't have been more different than what I was dealing with at Environment Canada. Rules and regulations and standard operating procedures are not something that most snow contractors are, whether they have them, if it's not something they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and snow and ice even more so. Everything is very unpredictable. You're dealing with things as they happen. It's an emergency response. And so the difference was crazy, and I really, really enjoyed it.
That's it's something that drove me to this industry as well, is that emergency response. It's got to get done. There's no tomorrow. Yeah. And a lot of the stuff is done at night. You kind of got to be a night hawk and a day hawk because there's a lot of things going on through the day as well. But yeah, it's wild. And anyone probably listening to this totally understands that. Let's jump into, you started ConSalt, but you were actually out spraying liquid de-icers and actually learning, hands-on. So what was that like? Give us a little bit of a story or what have you.
Yeah. So when I started with this company, they were based out of Milton and Mississauga. They were using liquids, but only a little bit. And I was joined, it was, when was it? Maybe like 2018, 2019, and we were dealing with one of those salt shortages. So the company I was working with decided, hey, let's try and use more liquids. And so I was super down to try and get involved in that. So we had two liquid trucks at the time. So myself and my friend who got me involved, we decided we were going to be the liquid applicators. We were going to be the champions, and we are going to figure out how to do it. So we decided we were going to, focus on pre-treating, or anti-icing, before we tried to handle anything else. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit more depth, but it's going out before the storm, usually during the day or at night, depending on when the storm's coming, and applying your liquid. So one of my first times out, we were applying the sugar beet based de-icer that Eco sells. And I was using a new truck that I'd never used before, and I was driving it through the head office of one of our corporate clients, and I left the side sprayer on as I drove past, all of the like VIP parking area, and I covered them all in this like molasses colored or beet juice product, and I freaked out. So I jumped out of the truck and I took off the shirt I was wearing and started wiping down the cars, before I realized it was I wasn't going to be able to clean it all up. So I went in and I fessed up to what happened, gave everybody car wash tickets, and the product is water soluble, so there was no harm done. But it was definitely a learning lesson and funny intro to liquids.
Yeah, and trust me, I've heard these stories, and there's probably a bunch I haven't. Being in the industry 30 years, yeah, that's. It doesn't surprise me. A lot of people starting out, they have these types of issues or challenges because it's something new. It's something, that they don't know about it. And that kind of leads me to, what this show is all about and my path, and I'll kind of give, a quick rundown of that for those that, are just joining it, don't really know me. Myself, been in the industry for 35, 40 years, started out family run landscape company. And obviously, Dan, you know all about this, but everyone else doesn't. And from there, I was young, I was energetic. I thought there was a way you could do it better. I thought there was a way you could do it better. And so I went, high and low across the country into, the US, and was just starting to talk to people. And I happened to stumble upon a group out in the Northwest, Pacific, that were starting to fool around with liquid de-icing. Never heard of it. No one ever had. And kind of dabbled my feet in there, brought some ideas back, started playing around with it here in Canada, got more involved, and actually was some of the very first that put liquid de-icing down on the roads here within Canada. And during those travels, it was salt brine based, it was chemical based, and I still was like, okay, it works. These guys are onto something. I don't know how, at what level this will get to, but there's something here. And that's when I stumbled upon the sugar beet with a group out into the US, and we kind of decided to separate, the concept. They took the US, I took Canada, and we ran with it. And we were learning. 30 years ago, there was no equipment. We didn't even know how to spray this stuff. We were just figuring it out, and we did. And it took, we're coming up on almost 25 years of Eco Solutions, and this is after the initial development. And I would say we've gone through enough to understand most of the problems out there, but it's funny, your story, like there's some oddball stories that I've never heard of, that it comes around. But again, people may say, well, why liquids? Why did you stick on it, 30 years ago? What made you think that this was potentially going to become something? And I just, when I saw it work and no one else was doing it, I said, well, here's another option. Here's where it came from. Another tool in the toolbox. And I said, I got to continue this. I got to keep trying. I got to push the envelope, and I have for 25 years. We've just kept pushing, getting it out to cities, municipalities, educating, training, then getting into, contractors. and the private sector, and even homeowners are starting to get on board. And it's never the fact that it doesn't work, because it does. It's about
Yeah.
understanding how to use it properly. And a lot of people always say to me, can it be used, in any storm? And that's a big misconception. And I'm going to say, yes, it can. You just got to understand how to. And so, over the episodes, hopefully people are going to start to understand that, trying to put out a lot of education about it. But yeah, that's kind of my side of the story. And, it's always fun.
How did the industry kind of react when you started kind of bringing liquids to the forefront? Like, were people receptive to it? Did people think, like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it was legit slamming the door on our face, hanging up. To be honest, the first 10 years of the business, we almost closed the door 3 times. And people were, again, telling me, you're crazy. This is not going to take off. It's not going to work. Then one by one, I got it to work for them. I was able to change the mindset, and people started to understand it. And then going back to Environment Canada and so forth, when they started to put in the salt management plan in with the cities and municipalities, where if you use more than 500 metric tons, and you had to come up with a plan how to reduce the amount of salt, better storage, better equipment, better tracking, and alternative products, and liquids became one of those alternative products, that's when it finally started to become, maybe this will work. And so it's still been a struggle up to this point, but it was Municipal that really got it going.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see that with that kind of incentivization and that regulatory pressure was enough to kick people in. And then they realized, this is actually something that can help us in a lot of different ways. That's pretty cool.
It totally did. So let's get back to you. So that field experience that you had ultimately became ConSalt, but what does ConSalt actually do for contractors? What can you provide for them?
Yeah, so ConSalt at the moment primarily is tech enablement, software development, process automation, and process design. So, as everyone listening will be familiar with, like, a big suck of time and overhead is your administrative processes. So a lot of what we do is kind of get into the weeds with our clients, understand all of the different administrative stuff that's going on, and see what we can automate, see what we can streamline. And if software development is required, get into that world. Especially nowadays with AI, software development is becoming a bit more of a commodity, and the challenge becomes context management and systems design. And that's really what we specialize in. A lot of contractors in the snow space, construction, but we've diversified into manufacturing and supply chain companies as well. But my heart and a lot of my time is still spent with a couple core clients, Eco Solutions being one of them, and trying to push this road salt issue forward, because I really do care about the environmental side of things, and I want to see adoption of things like the Liquid Network and other initiatives. So that's what ConSalt does. Yeah, I'm involved in that, but my origin story is definitely from the environmental side, and I'm trying to focus more and more of my time on those sorts of initiatives, because I think it's going to require a lot of different people working together to actually try and solve this issue. And yeah,
totally. And what people don't understand is a lot of the things that you do blend very well with getting into liquid de-icing. And, taking advantage of that and understanding that will make them better. Not always year 1, but by year 2, year 3, year 4, and you really want to dial things in and be very good at what you do when it comes to liquid application. The things that you have done for us and work with us on and others, that's pretty important stuff. So that's pretty cool.
We'll often, when we start with a client that's in the snow space, focus on tracking of materials, tracking of time, mapping of sites, truly really understand from a data perspective what's going on, because a lot of the times contractors come in and they don't have that information. And without that information, the liquids, plan doesn't make as much sense, or it's not as clear to them how they're going to start saving money, because it's not just going to be on materials. It's going to be on the labor. It's going to be on the equipment. And without a proper allocation of those costs across your business, you don't see that full picture. And so, like you said, like it's often year 2, year 3 of working with a client where they start to use liquids. We've set up all of the data pipelines, and they're able to see why this makes sense on the long term. And yeah, that's definitely where I also landed on it. It's like anything. It takes a couple of years to work through the chaos of, especially in this business, there's a lot of chaos. But to me, it's definitive that liquid should be part of your toolbox, and has a meaningful impact on the bottom line.
Let's go back and let's kind of talk about, you had mentioned that, we were one of your first clients, that you've worked with us quite closely on a lot of this stuff. And we'll get to the liquid network, which is a big part of it in just a second, but the evolution, because you watched it, from before you even joined with us, right up into this point, what's your perception of what, I've done, what Eco's done, what, ConSalt is trying to work before, after the growth? Like, what's your overall thought of that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. When I first met you, I was working at this company, doing the liquid application. So the relationship was more supplier, consumer. And so it was interesting to see Eco at that time with their tanks and their manufacturing area. And every time I've kind of come, there's a new tanks, new processes implemented. But it wasn't really until we started working together that I got to see a little bit of the inside of the business and all of the systems that are implemented, and, the attention to detail with which you've built Eco Solutions. And I think that's what is going to allow something like the liquid network to work, and why you've seen the growth that you've seen in your business. Yeah, and even, our relationship together and the work we've done, it's evolved from, just design work, web development, now to more of this like systems-based work where we're able to automate a lot of the administration that's going to allow Eco Solutions to continue to scale and still maintain that attention to detail, the customer focus, the educational outreach, which is what I always really respected about you and your approach is, yeah, you're trying to make a sale, but you're also trying to educate the industry and educate the individual, and you want to give them the information to make the decision themselves. And I think anyone who works with you kind of comes away feeling that, like, yeah, of course he wants to make a sale, but his most important takeaway is that people actually start to believe in liquids. And clearly people are starting to believe in liquids. And that is the major takeaway of working together for almost 4 years now, is we've seen that uptick in multiple different avenues. And I think we both see the municipal or the contractor market about to take off. So
Yeah, totally. And honestly, that takes us into the liquid network, and really, what is it? You've been a part of it, and here's the elevator pitch. It was a concept that I saw over time that was needed in the industry, and basically, there was no one source to guide people to learn all of this, to get equipment, to get product. It was very segmented all over the place. If you could even find it, do you do it yourself? Do you just, find the right partners? And a lot of clients, potential clients, or loss of clients were because of this just kind of spread out approach, everyone for themselves. And I said, that's not how we're going to do this right, because people depend on this. Like we said, it's a 24-hour, emergency service. And, yeah, rock salt's been available. It's in depots. They're open 24/7. So the whole idea was to come up with the liquid network, was to, in one place, a membership hub for everybody to have the ability to find their equipment, their applications, their consulting, education, everything that we've developed over the last 25 years, all in one place. And the final element that I knew was needed was what we call our eco filling stations, a 24-hour self-served, let's call it, gas station for liquid de-icer. And that just kind of brings it all together, where now people are able to get product when they need it, locally so that they're not having to invest in heavy storage, or they don't even have the capability to because they don't have the yards or the infrastructure, don't want to, expand and push the envelope, especially right away. That's the whole concept of the liquid network. And it's just bringing the liquid industry together. And some people will say, oh, you're trying to, create it all for yourselves. And the way I look at it is like, well, somebody has to do something because there's bits and pieces all over the place, and bringing it together, I think, is the right way for the longevity. And, you can think what you think, but, I think it's a pretty good move for the industry. And, you know it. I know we've seen the results to this point. People are pretty excited about it. And we're even now, it's August. Normally we've barely talked to a handful of people. I can't even know. I don't even know the number of people we've actually spoken to this point that are so interested. So,
And have
saying
started to
that,
sign up for the portal. Yeah.
yeah, totally. And, you on your side, you've been so very close to the software side. Just give a quick rundown of what people would actually see if they go to liquidnetwork.ca and sign in. What are they gonna come up with?
Yeah, so the liquidnetwork.ca, like you said, was formed from this concept of what are the barriers that contractors face in trying to get into liquids. And we've attempted, to take our best shot at solving those issues. Obviously, it's going to continue to evolve over time. So if you go to liquidnetwork.ca, you'll see kind of our pitch, our 5-minute elevator pitch of what we think the barriers are, which you've already expressed, like education, equipment access, and then actually access to those materials. So if by going to the site, you can explore it. You don't have to sign up right away. You can understand what the liquid network is and what these filling stations are. Once you sign up, you'll be prompted to do a short onboarding where you'll give us a bit of information about the equipment that you already have, whether you're using liquids or not, and you'll be pointed to our dashboard where you'll be able to explore these different resources. That includes our equipment partners page, where you'll be able to link to some of our partners who are providing exclusive deals to members of the Liquid Network, and we're trying to secure more and more of these as we go. You'll have access to all of our educational resources, which include application guidelines, messaging that you can use to your clients to communicate, your implementation of these liquid strategies, thoughts on how to train your team, and references to other training programs offered through places like Smart About Salt and SIMA that are going to help your team kind of learn more and more about it. And then really the coup de grace is access to these filling stations. And so it's going to work similar to like you would where your water filling station, you add money to your account, and you're able to send your guys to go fill up liquids during a storm, before a storm. You don't have to worry about the storage issue anymore. And yeah, have we run one of these before? I know last year we started, we did the first installation at your shop. How did that go? What were your first kind of takeaways from doing this last year?
Yeah, I guess I was very optimistic that we would have minimal issues, but we kept it so simple that there were no issues. Probably the only one I can say is someone didn't put the hose back into its location, left it on the ground. The next truck came, drove over the hose. So we had to replace the hose because it was a flat pancake. But little things like that, besides that, the actual entering in your code that you'd be provided by the Liquid Network that you would set up on the portal,
Yeah.
and it's start and stop. That's it. And then, it's billed through the account. There's money on the account, or you have an account in the system. It's that easy. And then you have the reports as well on, how much this truck did, because we can set up, I believe, trucks and users,
Drivers,
or combinations of both. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, honestly, I think we gave access to 4 contractors, this past winter. And, it was this huge success. And we kind of stood back and just watched, and we were like, that's how it's supposed to work. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. Pull up, connect, in and out, 5 minutes. And you'd be surprised at how fast it does fill up. Like, we have to control the flow rates for, making sure that it's not coming out too fast, so it's metered properly, calibrated. There's a lot of aspects to it, but yeah, I think we're at about 280 gallons a minute, so it's filling quite quick. And so you can do the smallest of trucks, within a minute or two, or you can do some of your bigger trucks, 5 to 10 minutes. You're in and out. And the biggest thing that we've done with this filling station is we wanted to make sure that the site was truly 24/7, that you had access to it, because what you got to remember, liquids are typically not done during the storm. They're done before or after. And when I say before, it could be 1, 2, 3 days before anti-icing. If you have a huge portfolio and you only have one or two small trucks, you could be as easily as 3 days out doing it and do 2 days out doing it. So that was one big feature we wanted to make sure. And we're starting small. I think right now we have 5 stations set up across Southern Ontario. But we're hoping next year there's another 3 to 5, maybe 15 to 20 in the next 3 to 5 years, trying to target, areas where we believe there is demand. And it's hard because we're finding liquid applicators coming out of the woodwork that were doing their own thing. They were producing their own salt brine. And all of a sudden now they're like, I'm not going to waste my time doing that anymore. I'm just going to buy it ready to go. I'm not, the manufacturer. There's no liability involved in that. I don't have to, pay or source salt or anything. Just go buy it. So again, yeah, the volumes I think are going to be a little bit larger than we thought just to kick it off, which is fantastic. It just means that this industry that we're basically building is on a rocket. And so that's pretty exciting. So, thinking 5 years out, what do you think the liquid network, where it could go?
Yeah. Similar to what you experience with municipalities, I think we're right at that inflection point with contractors. As much as we don't want additional regulation, like the chloride problem from an environmental perspective is a massive one, and it is getting more and more out of control, and there is going to be a response at a certain point. And so I think, whether contractors come to it on their own because of increasing salt prices, demand from their clients, or they're forced towards it through regulation, I think it's inevitable that contractors are going to have to start using liquids, and they're going to have to figure it out. And it's going to become a competitive advantage to have been doing it for a longer period of time, because the ones who are just getting into it are going to lose contracts. They're going to have service issues, and it's better to dip your toe in and figure it out with 1 truck or 2 trucks before you're forced to do it. So I see the liquid network growing. I know in year 1, there's going to be issues that we don't foresee, whether those are software issues or hardware issues or shipping logistics. But, what I've seen over time of working with Eco is that you lean into that complexity and you figure it out. And I know the people that are going to get in first are going to kind of share that same philosophy. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. I think this is necessary for the industry. It's going to open up the door to operations managers everywhere who, I've worked as a dispatcher, and when it's 6 a.m. in the morning and all your salt trucks are somewhere else, if you got a liquid truck parked at home and you can send that to go fill up and deal with an issue, you're going to do it. So I want that operations manager to be able to send their guys to the liquid network, pay with a credit card, and argue with their owners later about whether or not that was a right call. And then slowly, I think everyone's going to be using liquids, and whether it takes 2 years or 10 years. I don't see any other way that we handle this chloride issue. So excited to see where it goes, excited to be a part of it, grateful for kind of the opportunity. And it's going to be a big winter this year. How are you feeling about it all?
Nervous when it comes to Mother Nature, because, you have to over prepare all the time. Otherwise, you're going to be caught with your pants down, and that's not great in the winter. And so it's the same with us. We are trying to be over prepared, ready for anything, ready for the worst, and hoping we hit somewhere in the middle where it's manageable. Everyone, can do their job, can make money, and everyone's happy. And at the end of the day, just literally growing the liquid industry. And again, this is not a knock on salt. And a lot of people say that to me. They're like, oh, well, the salt guys are going to hate you. I'm like, well, why? There's no reason. We're not getting rid of salt. even if I took, a quarter of the industry, it's not even a quarter of the salt demand that's still going to be needed. But we got to start somewhere. If we use liquid, we're going to lower the amount of salt that we're putting into the environment just because of, and it's a better place all around. And then once contractors really start to understand that you can actually save money getting into liquid, that's a whole nother realm. And that's where, does it happen year one? Not always. You're starting to push into year two, year three, where you start to see that growth. But you got to get started because you're going to be left behind. A lot of PMs are really jumping on board and looking at it, and rightfully so. So
Uh-huh.
saying that, before we wrap up here, Dan, anything that you didn't touch on that you think someone in the business needs to hear?
Yeah, I think the saying of the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. I think that's so true of liquids and data and reporting and automation, like the things that are relevant to you and to me. Um, a lot of contractors in our industry can be overwhelmed because they're starting from square one, and I guess I just challenge people to push through that because now is the time. Salt shortages are becoming more common. Who knows what the salt prices are going to look like this year? It's a great opportunity to jump in. And you don't have to go full in. Try some walkways, sign up for the portal, be part of it because, you're going to get the best, experience by being part of it from the start. And we're really just getting started here and we're learning and learning how to roll this out at scale. And I think it could be really, really important for people to get involved at this stage. And so I guess I just challenge people to not get overwhelmed, to start asking questions, to start having these meetings within their own internal teams, and to put together a plan just like the municipalities did 10 years ago. Maybe it isn't all, this year, but have a 5-year liquids plan and see if you can kind of push that forward each year.
Yeah. Well said. I second that notion. So Dan, really appreciate you taking the time and being straight with us about this, what this actually looks like.
Yeah.
That's what this show is all about. Real stories from people doing the work. If you want to learn more about the Liquid Network or you're thinking about making the switch yourself, check the link in the show notes. Thanks for listening and we'll see you again.
Thanks a lot.